Make sure to subscribe and turn on the notifications so you can be alerted when new content is released. Enjoy the video.
In fact, when a person is addicted to the hormones of stress, 10 great things could happen in their day. And one bad thing will happen and they will obsess about that one bad thing, because in survival, you got to be ready for the worst thing to happen, because if it happens again, you got to know how to deal with it. So most people are always preparing for the worst when they live in survival. Of course, when you're experiencing stress and survival, you experience separation. You feel your senses are heightened. You become a materialist, and you experience separation from you and everybody else. And if they look differently than you, that's even more separation. And by the same means, there's you here, and then there's your dreams, and you place your dreams way over there. And most people are separate from their dreams, and they have to run and rush to get them. And that is how human beings live. Reality is determined by the senses. Most people are living by cause and effect. They only see limited possibilities because they're predicting their future based on their past. There is incoherence in the brain. We've measured this thousands of times. There's incoherence in the heart because you're stepping on the gas pedal and you're stepping on the brake at the same exact time, because you're not running, you're not fighting, you're not hiding. You're sitting there in those chemicals and not knowing what to do with them. So then, most people cling to the familiar and cling to the known, because the unknown in survival is a very scary place. So most people then spend their whole lives wishing, wanting, trying, hoping, praying, and nothing ever changes. Now, living in a state of creation, there will always be homeostasis. There will be expansion. We've actually measured the electromagnetic field around people's bodies. When they start feeling gratitude, there's an expansion of energy. There's a release of energy. The body goes into anabolism, or what's called tissue repair. There's health, there's regeneration. The elevated emotions of love, joy, trust, knowing, gratitude, those are selfless emotions. This is where people serve the best. This is where they truly serve the best, the ones that are heart-centered. And it turns out you can teach that. And we have research to show that whether you're young, whether you're old, whether you're sick, whether you're healthy, whether you're a vegetarian, whether you're not, whether you're successful, whether you're poor, it doesn't matter. You can teach a person how to create this type of coherence. Now, when a person's in a state of creation, they have no attention on their body. They have no attention on their environment. They don't even be thinking about time. They're transcendent of their identity. That is the moment now, that transcendental moment where they're in the creative state. And living in creation is when you forget about yourself. That is the moment you're truly creating. Of course, there's growth and repair in the body. We tend to go from a narrow focus to an open focus. Open focus means you're no longer focusing your attention on an object. You're aware, your awareness opens, and we now know that if you teach a person how to open their awareness and you measure their brain, we've done this thousands and thousands of times, the brain gets highly integrated, highly organized, more whole. And when the brain is working right, you're working right. And when your brain isn't working right, you're not working right. And when you're living in stress and you're trying to predict and control everything in your life, and you're shifting your attention from one person to one problem to one thing to one place to another person to another problem, every one of those elements has a neurological network in your brain. And the arousal of those stress hormones combined with switching attention creates a very incoherent brain. And that person's narrowing their attention on knowns. And if you teach them how to do the exact opposite, it's the formula where the brain starts to synchronize. And what syncs in the brain links in the brain. And all of a sudden, the person starts feeling more like themselves. Of course, they feel more connected. They're interested in a reality beyond their senses because they're in the creative state. Now they're no longer living by cause and effect. They feel like they're causing an effect. They start seeing new possibilities. The brain and heart become highly coherent. And then they're craving the unknown. They're not shrinking from it. They want the adventure. And this is when the magic starts to happen. So check this out. People all of a sudden make a different choice. They head in the wrong direction. They're no longer on purpose. It started with a thought. That thought led to a choice, that choice led to a behavior, that behavior created an experience, and that experience produced an emotion. And now the person has lost their sense of purpose and forgot about their goals, and they return back to the old self just for the familiar feeling of the old self. Of course, you can do the same thing when it comes to staying healthy. We've all done this. You make a different choice because you had a different thought, a familiar thought that led to the same behavior, the same experience, and the same feeling. So now, you have 3 brains that allow you to go from thinking to doing to being. The yellow brain right there is called your neocortex. It's the most evolved in human beings and dolphins. It's the seat of your identity and your personality. It's the seat of your conscious awareness. Underneath that brain, right in the middle, is called the limbic brain, or the chemical brain, or the emotional brain. And that red brain then is the subconscious brain. Now, your brain is made up of 100 billion neurons. The number of connections on the average neuron is about 40,000 to 10,000 connections. If you took a scoop of gray matter the size of a grain of sand, you would have 100,000 neurons in it with over 1 billion connections. Those neurons aren't two-dimensional, they're actually three-dimensional. They communicate in an X, Y, Z axis in all directions. So then, learning is making new synaptic connections. If you learned anything today, this is what happened in your brain. Well, he's kind of talking fast. I think I'll pay attention. Oh, now I understand. That's learning. Every time you learn something new, this happens in your brain. It's happening right now. One whole neurological network connecting with another neurological network, we call this the aha phenomenon. In the brain, the sum of the parts is greater than the whole. This is understanding right there. Now, there's a principle in neuroscience that says that nerve cells that fire together wire together. The more you think the same thoughts, the more you demonstrate the same behaviors, the more you create the same feelings and emotions, the more you assemble new circuitry to reflect it. And so that if you keep firing, you keep wiring, all of a sudden you form what's called a memory. And memory is the maintaining or sustaining of those connections. And now, just like any relationship, the more you communicate, the more you connect. And neurons are very, very social. How many people are with me? Does this make sense? So then, if you get enough neurons beginning to connect with one another, you form what's called a neurological network, or a neural net. And a neural net is just gangs of neurons that have just fired and wired together to form a community of neurosynaptic connections that's related to a thought, a skill, behavior, a habit, an action. It's something that you've done so many times that you no longer have to consciously think about it. But these neurological networks are not just chemical. They're, in fact, very electrical. You want to see a thought? Watch this. Boom, there's a thought. You generate more electrical impulses in your brain in one day than all the cell phones on the planet put together. And it's not coming from the breakfast you ate. You're connected to a resource of energy. So neurological networks. You have a neurological network to brush your teeth. You have a neurological network to walk, to speak a language, to complain. It's something you've done so many times that you don't even have to consciously think about it. Are you with me still? So then, knowledge is the precursor to experience. The more knowledge you have, the more prepared you are for an event. If people can get their behaviors to match their intentions, or their mind and body working together, their actions equal to their thoughts, the end product of an experience is called the emotion. Now they're embodying the truth. Knowledge is for the mind, experience is for the body. Now they're embodying that chemically. So then, this is how I raised my kids. Once you understand how you created the experience, that's called wisdom. And wisdom then is evolution, and you can then add it to your knowledge base, and that's called life. If people keep living by the same emotions every single day, and they're derived from the hormones of stress, they keep signaling the same genes. And genes make proteins. And proteins are responsible for the structure and function of your body. And the expression of proteins is the expression of life. I don't care if you have the most vegetarian, organic, food-combining diet. If you're living in fear your entire life, it is the fear that's down-regulating the gene. Change that, and all of a sudden, the body takes that information, from the environment of the cell and begins to make new proteins. So when you have an experience enriches the circuits in your brain. Once those circuits are enriched, the end product of an experience then is when that limbic brain begins to make a chemical or an emotion. Now the chemistry is reaching the body, not just the mind. It's no longer philosophical. It's becoming very real. And there's what's called a neuropeptide that begins to signal hormonal centers, and you feel uplifted. You feel invincible. You feel free. You feel abundant, whatever it is. So then, here's the moment of truth. You come to the seminar this week, you gain all this knowledge and information, you're walking around your office telling a person, hey, you need to be more emotionally intelligent. You need to forgive. You need to work on this. Telling everybody everything to do. And you're invited to the party, and there's the person at the party that betrayed you. The person that you don't like, the enemy that you have. And now you walk into the woman's bathroom and you start thinking, if you're a woman anyway, you start thinking about how you're going to murder your enemy, how you're going to poison her wine. What are you going to do to get back at her because she betrayed you? Now remember, stress is when your brain and body are knocked out of balance, but now it's not a lion, it's your coworker. So here you go, you start auto-suggesting to yourself, I hate my coworker. These are thoughts that are producing emotions. She betrayed me last year, I'm going to get her back. And now you're turning on the primitive nervous system and you're moving into emergency, and you will go unconscious and not remember anything you learned in your brain. You'll go unconscious and return back to the old self. Are you with me still? But we have this ability because of the size of the frontal lobe. Your frontal lobe, your creative center, it makes up 40% of your entire brain. This is what separates us from all other species. 40% in humans, 14 to 17% in monkeys and gibbons, 7% in dogs, 3% in cats. And if your cat is smarter than you, I'll give you an idea how much of your frontal lobe you're using. It's the seat of our free will. It's where we learn. It's where we have intention. It's where we invent. It's where we have attention. It's when we speculate new possibilities. We decide. We have behavior control. We can focus our concentration, and we can restrain our emotional reactions. This is the seat of your conscience. So here you are, the old self. You get the word that she's at the party. And we have this ability to observe our thoughts. So then if you're observing your thoughts, it means you're no longer the program. You are the consciousness observing the program, and you have to become conscious in order to change. So then you can look at those thoughts and observe them without engaging them. In neuroscience, it's called metacognition. If you observe the thought without participating in it, the observation of the thought separates you from the thought. Now you're beginning to objectify from your subjective self. And observing those, or being present with them without reacting to them, is the art of change. So now, here you are, you're observing those thoughts and you're settling those thoughts down, no longer firing and wiring those thoughts, and then you say, wait a second, I read the book on compassion by the Dalai Lama, I read the book by Mother Teresa on forgiveness, I went to the emotional intelligence seminar and the emotional releasing seminar. I got some circuits in my brain that I can use. So you gather yourself up in the bathroom and you say, okay, what is it to forgive? What is it to have compassion? How am I going to take this knowledge and do something with it? This is the moment of truth. So when you begin to say, what am I going to do differently? You turn on which part of your brain? The frontal lobe. That's the workshop. That's the boss. That's the CEO. That's the symphony leader. And all of a sudden now you ask the question, what is compassion? And now you got to search for those circuits in your brain. Yeah, I got to see myself in her. I don't really like that, but I guess I'll do it. Got to let go of the past, and all of a sudden you start remembering what you've learned. When you get enough of these circuits firing in tandem, the next thing you know, you're in a scene. Your brain begins to imagine you in the future. And now when you do that, you're beginning to install the neurological hardware in your brain in preparation for walking out of that bathroom. You're priming your brain to do something differently. Are you with me still? And all of a sudden, you get a vision in your mind or a picture in your mind, and that's called intention. And if you can get your behaviors to match your intentions and walk out of that bathroom and do exactly what the book said or what the lecture said, the moment you do that properly and you follow the instructions, you start to feel compassion in your heart. You start to feel forgiveness. You start to feel an elevated emotion. And now your body is understanding what your mind understood, and you're embodying the truth of it. Now, you can't do it once and be expected to be on the stained glass windows in church. You got to be able to reproduce the experience.